Hey everyone, and Happy New Year! This is the first episode of Timeless in 2024, and it is so great, as always, to be with you. I hope that, as always, you will stay tuned to this channel, especially because we have a lot of new and exciting stuff coming up in the next few weeks. So please come right back here to check all of that out. Like many of you, I use the new year as an opportunity to start anew, to really elevate myself and charge forward as a better and brighter version of Julie Hartman. And one of the ways that I try to do that is to each year identify more and more really wise people who I think offer a different perspective on life and can give me a lot of things to learn because of their life experience. One such person who has really provided that to me in the short time that I've known him is Aaron Prager. You can tell from his last name that he is in the Prager family. He is actually Dennis Prager's son. And like his father, he is an incredibly wise individual, a true chip off the old block. But also, Aaron has had an incredibly unique life experience. He has been very open about the fact that he was addicted to alcohol and drugs for much of his life. And he made a miraculous recovery in 2016 and talks so much about his journey to sobriety. The wisdom that he shares, I think, is applicable to all of us, not just those of us who have struggled with addiction or know people who have struggled with it. So today I am so excited and honored to welcome Aaron to the show so that he can share some of that wisdom with all of us. I'm Julie Hartman, and this is Timeless. Hey everyone, and welcome to Timeless and to the Julie Hartman YouTube channel in general. In addition to Timeless, which is Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, you can also catch my show with Dennis Prager, aptly called Dennis and Julie. That premieres every Monday at this channel, and all of our content is at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern, and you can listen to it on Apple and Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts. As I said today, I'm so excited to be welcoming Aaron Prager to the show. Anybody with the last name Prager is totally worth talking to just get all of the wisdom that you can, and Aaron here is no exception. As I said, he is the host of a new podcast called AP Unfiltered, which talks about a wide range of subjects, especially politics and news, but also, again, ranging all across the board. So I'm so happy to have him here. Aaron, welcome to Timeless.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you extending the invitation, especially after doing the fireside chat with my father and getting such a platform to be able to bring what I believe is a message of goodness to the world. So thank you for having me on.
Well, you're certainly doing that. And one of the things I love about you are your one-liners. And that so came through in the fireside chat. And even the acronyms that you have for things like ego, edging God out. You have so many of those pearls of wisdom. So I'm really excited to dive into that today. But first, can you give a little bit of a background of yourself? Maybe your 2-minute life story for those who are unfamiliar. And maybe also you can talk about why you decided to launch AP Unfiltered.
So a brief backstory on me is, well, I was adopted at birth, and whenever I tell people that, I have to stop for a second and just thank God that I was, because I did get a chance to see what my life would have been like if I had not been adopted. And I'm sure we'll get into it later. It wouldn't have been good for me, and I wouldn't have turned out very well, I have no doubt. But I mean, essentially, I had my struggles in life. I did struggle with alcohol addiction, drug addiction. What I also like to say, I suffered from the disease of the great I am, thinking that I am the alpha and the omega of the universe. So that I'm able to sit here today, not only sober, but alive to begin with, is a blessing from God. And, as you said, my father being who he is, he never wavered in his, I don't say support, because I do think it's an idiotic thing to say that you should always support your children through everything they want to do. he never turned his back on me in trying to help me. And I'm eternally grateful for that. So.
Well, I may have told you this, but I definitely have talked about it on Dennis and Julie. I have gone to a few open AA meetings over the past few months/years. And when I tell people that, they go, why would you do that? Isn't that kind of depressing? Or don't you feel like you perhaps don't belong? But I know I'm using this word a lot, but it's a Pragerian word, wisdom. The amount of wisdom that I get in those meetings is so extraordinary that I keep wanting to go back. And also, the people who I encounter there are so real. And I've met a lot of real people, thankfully, but they are real in a way that I almost can't describe, where they're so vulnerable that they don't have any capacity to be fake. They're not interested in impressing you or, giving you some kind of narrative about their life. They're so stripped bare that they have to be who they are, and that is incredibly appealing to me. So I always love talking with people who have this kind of experience, even though it's very sad and tragic, but the quality of person that you get from that is unparalleled.
I will say this is, and I'm going to preface it by saying, I'm not knocking therapy. I'm not knocking any of the things that, people, in terms of psychological analysis. I have been to therapy my entire life. My parents divorced when I was 13, which is a very difficult age for people to go through divorce. I mean, any age is difficult for people to go through divorce, but 13 was most people will acknowledge is very difficult because you're aware enough of what's going on, but still unable to comprehend like the nuance behind it. So I was in therapy for a lot of my life. I'll tell you this. I've gotten some of the best quote unquote therapy from electricians, from plumbers, from blue collar workers, people who work at McDonald's. I don't name the specific recovery program that I'm involved in due to the traditions behind the program, but it is 12-step based. And I wouldn't change a thing about my recovery story. And, the old cliche that, my past made me who I am. It's very true. And it's a cliche for a reason.
Mm-hmm. So as we're talking about, I want to spend most of today talking about your experience, your addiction experience and what you've learned from that. But before we get into that in more depth, do you get kind of annoyed when people zero in on this? Do you kind of wish, in other words, that people asked you more questions just beyond your addiction experience? Or are you so happy to have the opportunity to talk about it? I never know sometimes with people, like, is going there sometimes just too painful, or do you feel like it reduces you to just your addiction experience?
No, not at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I cherish any opportunity that I get to share my experience, strength, and hope with somebody, because the sad reality is, Julie, that the majority of people who struggle with these types of addictions, and it's an ever increasing issue in the US and around the world today, they don't ever set foot into a recovery program. So and someone wiser than me, and you'll hear a lot of this, someone wiser than me gives me the nuggets of wisdom. Mm-hmm. Someone once said to me that they said, Aaron, you might be the only recovery book that someone ever sees. So you got to make it count. And the baseline for recovery programs, to fully answer your question, is it's one person helping another person. That's what it's all, and ultimately trying to get to a place where you can build or you can cultivate and build further a relationship with a higher power or God. I choose to call it God. A lot of people choose to call it God. A lot of people don't. But the reality is that most people never see this. So no, I don't get, turned off when people only want to talk about this, because at that moment, I have to turn that up to God, because I was given the opportunity of recovery. I was given the gift of recovery. So who am I to yank it away from somebody? You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. And it is what makes your worldview so unique. The personal experience that you went through, and finding God and becoming such a remarkable individual today. So let's start with the moment that you first drank or used drugs. When was that? And did you know immediately that this was going to be a problem for you?
So the first time I ever drank was roughly, I want to say, I mean, I'll back it up even further. I was always fascinated by it. Like I saw my mother, my brother, my sister, not so much my dad. My dad never really drank. Maybe a cup of Bartonura, which is like 3% alcohol at Shabbos dinner or whatever, sometimes.
I've never seen him drink ever. And we spend every Shabbat together. He takes a little sip sometimes when he's doing the prayer, and then he always goes, ugh. So I can attest to that. Anyway, go on. I'm sorry.
But I remember seeing how there was a switch like that clicked when you would see what I came to understand later was the alcohol taking hold. And I was always fascinated by that. From a very early age, I wanted to feel outside of myself, and that's really what it boiled down to, is whether it was alcohol, drugs, any behavior to get me outside of myself. But the first time I ever drank, I'd say like the age range was 10, 11, maybe.
Wow.
Like sufficiently drunk was probably 12, like sufficiently intoxicated. And I think I shared this on the Fireside Chat. I'll share it again because it is a moment that a lot of people who have yet to qualify themselves as having an issue could take, is when I felt the effects of alcohol, the first time, true and good, I knew to myself I wanted to feel like this every single day for the rest of my life. But also being a part of being an alcoholic is like I didn't see that was going to be a problem. I didn't think that just because I want to feel good all the time that it's a problem. I didn't know the difference, and especially being young, I don't even know if that had anything to do with it. It's just a mindset that most people don't have. Like everybody wants to feel good, but not outside of themselves. And that's where I was.
So when you were 10, how did you get the alcohol? Was it in your parents' house or did you get it from friends? And then when you first got drunk, what setting was that in?
The first time, like where I was specifically, I don't necessarily remember where I was, but I mean, it was just around it, because I wasn't going into it like, later teenagers look at alcohol, they seek it out. They're like, ooh, let's get that. I want that. It was more just of what I was talking about. I see people who are outside themselves. Like they seem like they're having fun. Why I could try that. And I see that it has something to do with this little, liquid that they pour into a cup. So it was different then than I think it was later on, or I know it was very different.
I remember being young and being so fascinated with the idea of getting drunk or getting high. Because I would see, first of all, I'd see adults, I'd see people in movies and TV shows, and it really is packaged as this liberating, euphoric thing that is captivating to everyone. Do you think that popular culture is maybe contributing to some of the addiction prevalence or issues by hyping up alcohol use and drunkenness and getting high so much?
Well, yeah, I think I don't think it's the main driver, but I'll give you an example. Kids songs have references to drugs.
Yes.
What's that song? I can't feel that song.
Yeah.
Like, that's about cocaine.
Yep.
And it's played in kids movies. So, I mean, in every charting song for the most part, whether it's rap, whether it's country, whatever have you, there in every video game. I mean, not to sound like the people who used to say, video games are going to make people violent, but you can't ignore an aspect about certain things that our society holds up and glorifies. Of course, a developing mind is going to take that and feel like they need to go to achieve that. I mean, that can be substituted for everything, and not to derail the conversation into something else entirely, but the avenues for doing so have never been better than before. You have not just long form content now, you have specifically short form content, 60 seconds and under, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram, all of these videos that are just designed to cripple developing minds into ADHD and all of these other things. So what do they have to put in there? You can just sprinkle in all the things you want them to think. And you created like the perfect avenue delivery system to just throw these ideas into young developing minds.
Yes, totally. I thought of the movie Cocaine Bear as you were speaking. I don't know if you saw it. I certainly didn't see it, but it's just like everywhere you turn. I mean, even if you go down the street, you see all of these weed stores just popping up, all of the time.
Well, we don't have that here.
Well, Aaron, for those who don't know, he's in Pennsylvania. Really? They don't have weed stores in Pennsylvania?
We're not recreational here. It's we're strictly medicinal still, and there are. I mean, they don't advertise, like, you don't have the leaf symbol, in front of the store. It's like, I know where a couple medical stores are, but you would never be able to tell if you were just driving down the road.
So, okay, so you're 10 years old when you first start having alcohol. The first time you can remember getting drunk was 12. When did you first take drugs? And if you don't remember, obviously that's fine, but how are they offered to you? I'm just fascinated by this idea how a young teen gets their hands on drugs.
I mean, so I have a saying, and it's something that a lot of struggling addicts deal with, because there is a I don't think there's a difference. I think that regardless if it's alcohol, drugs, sex addiction, whatever have you, it's the same ism, right? It's the same ism. It's the same spiritual malady. I have a saying that what goes really good when I say it like this, when I sponsor somebody who's primarily a drug addict, I did both. And they struggle with, well, why can't I drink alcohol? And I'm like, listen, when's the last time that you remember just drinking and then not craving drugs? One, because ultimately, you know what goes really good with alcohol? Drugs. Oh,
God. Yeah. So how old were you when you first got your hands on drugs?
Same time, roughly the same age. I mean, I was exposed to older kids. I did go to a school that was blending of middle school and high school together, but how did it get offered to me? Some people are very just upfront about it. They're like, here, have some. I didn't go seeking it. It was right in front of my face, and I asked and I bought, and that's how it went.
I feel comfortable asking personal questions because
Absolutely.
I know your family so well, and I know that they're okay with it. And also I watched the fireside chat, and one of the great things about it was you guys really went there. I mean, I was so in awe of Dennis when he asked you questions like, did you ever think that I favored David because he's my biological son and you're adopted? Is there anything I could have done? I was so impressed with him. So before I ask these really personal questions, I want the audience to know that I know that they're comfortable with it. And obviously if you're not, step in and tell me to shut up. But so did your parents or did David have any sense that you were drinking and taking drugs when you were in your teens?
Yeah, I got. So when my parents divorced, my mom and dad, for my sake, they moved one street apart from one another, and had two homes. And I had been using and drinking, but mostly just smoking weed at the time and drinking a lot, because alcohol was my main vice. I want to put a disclaimer on that. Mm-hmm. But my mother caught me on the phone with a weed dealer when I was like 12 or something. Wow. or 13, like around that age, like right after my parents got divorced. And she kicked me out and I had to go to my dad's house. So they always knew that there was an issue, and I come to find later out in my life that I did have people in my life, primarily my biological mother, because I am adopted. She struggled with the same two vices that I ended up using as my main two vices, which were alcohol and crystal meth. So, they knew. My brother, my sister, I drank with my brother, I drank with my sister. But then again, if I'm at ages where, you usually do that or whatever, or you're a teen just experimenting, I would always say, like, I'm just a teen, I'm just experimenting, when in reality it was like, I want to feel like this every single day of my life, but yet still not knowing it was a problem. And my mother knew. My mother would come home a lot and see me, curled up next to the toilet. She knew I had a problem. She knew that there were things beyond just the normal teen going out and partying, but like we said on the fireside chat as well, there was nothing she could do. What is she going to do? Take away my phone? Tell me to go to my dad's house, which ultimately she did at one point. I had to go to my dad's house for a second time. That seemed to be because my dad, And I always had really strong resentments against my father. And like you said, my father and I are very open about this. I'm sure he wouldn't have any problem me saying, like, I blamed him for the divorce. I blamed him for every single thing in my life that was wrong. Like when I had to do my inventory when I got sober, it was like a whole notebook's worth of resentments I had against him that I thought were real, but in reality, and that's why you don't go through the book alone. You don't go through this, the program I did alone, because I needed someone to explain to me this was a lot made up in my head. I know that was kind of like a long circular answer, but yeah.
So when you were kicked out of your mom's house and went to your dad's house, did your dad have any sense of the extent of the problem? You say that when you were at your mom's house, you were curled up by the toilet. Did anything like that ever happen at your dad's?
Oh yeah, I destroyed one of my dad's bathrooms once. And I didn't remember it. And then Sue actually had to tell me about it. So,
oh no!
Yeah. But that was down the road. That's when it was very clear that there was a problem. That was young adulthood.
Did they ever talk to you about it, or did your brother or your mom? Did they ever sit you down and go, "What the heck is going on"?
If they did, Julie, I genuinely do not remember because it wasn't important to me.
Yeah, you talked about in the fireside chat. It was so interesting how you, in a state, called your dad, and you credited God in talking about that and asked for help. And then when your dad showed up at your front door to go to the airport, you said, "What the heck are you doing here?" Because you were in that state of not remembering anything. Wow.
Yeah, just out there.
So I just want to get a sense of the timeline. Okay, so we know that you started drinking a little bit when you were 10. First time you got drunk was when you were 12. Around that same time, you started using drugs. How many years was this addiction in its full-fledged mode?
Interesting. I want to put this out there as well for young people struggling. Mm-hmm. You're not going to know when it switches from being a party to being a lifestyle. That's important to point out.
Boy, is that important.
There's not like one day you wake up. There are few, and for them, that is literal God intervening in their life in that moment. But most of the time, you don't know when that switch gets flicked. I'd say the thralls of real addiction. I mean, I could say like I'll quantify it with how long I was using crystal meth, because that's really a demon of its own. That was about so I got sober in 2016. I'd say it was about 5 or 6 years of real crystal meth addiction.
Wow.
So yeah, that was bad, and which ultimately led me to the needle, and that was something I swore to myself I'd never do. I swore to myself I'd never drive drunk. My first DUI was when I was 17.
Wow.
There's all these things. Addiction does something to you that nothing else does, and that is you start lowering your standards to meet your behaviors.
Wow. I told you, everyone, the one-liners. That's one right there.
I mean, it's the only story I got, by the way. It's just my story. It's the only one I got. And I would be remiss if I did not state that, because that could be every single drug addict, alcoholic's mission statement, is that they couldn't lower their standards fast enough to meet their behavior.
Can you give an example?
Well, like I said I'd never use the needle. I said I would never drive drunk. There was just all of the things that were, I would never do this, seemed to, the longer I went, seemed to speed up and up and up and up. There are some things that I maybe shouldn't say this publicly, but you got to get the picture. There's just so many things that I said I never would do that I ended up doing, which then contributes to that hole in the soul, because then you feel a sense of like your self-worth is just evaporated.
You know, what you just said a few moments ago about that kind of blurry line of partying and then really being an addict, that is so important. And you said that you couldn't really figure out when that line was crossed. But I also want to say that it's really hard for other people, the family members or the friends of addicts, to figure out when that line is crossed. And, we were talking about your parents, and I am so blessed to know and love your family as well as I do. And I know that if they saw that you were struggling, they would intervene and help you. But also from their perspective, and I've been in this because I have someone very close to me who's struggled with addiction, weed addiction. It's really hard to be able to tell, okay, is this just kind of a kid who's out or partying, enjoying himself or herself, and it's gone too far, and now they've learned the lesson and they're, spending some time in the bathroom and are going to wake up the next morning and never want to do that again? Or is this really an issue? It's very, very hard for people on the outside as well as on the inside, as you're saying, to know where that line is. And it can create a great sense of guilt, looking back and going, oh gosh, I should have known. I should have seen those signs that the time, the throwing up until 2 a.m. lasted happened too many times. I should have intervened sooner.
I have to make this crystal clear. There's nothing that people can do to urge your loved one. You can't, or you could always urge, but that might turn into the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and again, expecting a different result. Mm-hmm. There's nothing that you could urge people, but you're never going to do it for them. That's a fool's errand, and you're going to drive yourself crazy in the process. They call addiction a family disease specifically because of that reason. The family gets so hurt by the individual in their active addiction / alcoholism / whatever other ism that they then themselves start to lose parts of themselves by trying to fix it. And that's what Dad was talking about on the fireside chat as well, is that you can't take too much credit for your kid. You can't take all the blame for your kid either, especially when it comes to addicts. Mm-hmm. I mean, look about survivor's remorse. Think about people who lose people. They're like, oh, if I had only done something. It's like, well, you couldn't have done anything. Like, you can just be aware of the signs. That's the only thing I would urge people to really do, is just keep an eye out for when things, potentially like some signs could crop up, but don't try to fix it for them. You'll go crazy. Mm-hmm. So take me into what it is like to be drunk and high. By the way, stupid question, but being high, that is a term that applies to all drugs, right? Not just weed. Like, it's morphine. That's the same terminology you would use, being high. I've also heard like tripping. I don't know what the right vocab is, but I want to understand what that feels like. And when, as we've been talking about, you kind of realize, okay, this is no longer fun. This is no longer euphoric, and now it's dark and scary. What is that like? What's the dark and scary part look like? Because I could paint a really interesting picture for you. Would you? When did you realize it crossed over into that, and what is it like to be on these substances and have it not be fun anymore? Okay, so I could be a little bit more graphic here, can I? You can. Okay. But also whatever you're comfortable with. I don't want to ever push you into going there if you don't want to. No, but absolutely. I'll go there. So I will too. I'll paint you a picture of what my life looked like leading up to me going into treatment. Okay. So I was physically addicted to alcohol for many years at this point. And if I did not maintain a certain level or blood alcohol content level, my hand would start to shake. Oh, I would start to sweat. I would have alcoholic seizures and almost bite my tongue off. Okay? Now that's just the beginning. Couple that with crystal meth addiction. I had a Bluetooth breathalyzer app on my phone, and I had the mini one attached to my belt loop so I could maintain my alcohol level in my bloodstream. The trick was I had to stay awake to not go into DTs, delirium tremens, which can kill you. There's two substances the withdrawal can kill you: benzodiazepines and alcohol. Heroin addiction feels like the withdrawal feels like it's going to kill you, but it won't kill you. So I had to maintain my blood alcohol content using uppers to continue this process. This is where staying up for 3, 4, 5, 6 a week straight came into play. The psychosis that comes along with that, the people are outside your window. Trying to eat was a whole routine because I had to get the levels just right where I was able to come down from my meth high to get food into my system without falling asleep. Because if I fell asleep, I'd wake up in alcohol withdrawal. So this is a full-time job that I'm illustrating for you right now. And all the meanwhile, talk about the parents again, I'm hearing, just get a job. Why can't you pay your rent? Why can't you do this? And it's like, because they have no clue what I'm going through, but that's not their fault whatsoever. I edged them out of my life. My father, he couldn't have saved me more than he could, fly to the moon with a jetpack. There was no way. So full-blownsies addiction for me looked like that, and this hellacious nightmare that never ended. And there's no way to get out of that, in my opinion, by myself. I needed some sort of intervention. And what I mean by that is something kept my dad in my life. Something enabled me, because my mom passed away when I was 21. She never got to see me sober. It's one of the big points of pain that I hold in my life to this day. I had to make amends to her at her gravesite. But something kept my dad in my life. Something enabled me to make a phone call in the thralls of one of these episodes that I just painted a pretty colorful picture of you for, to call him. And then when he got to my house, to be able to say, hey, you know what? Sure, I'll just go with you to the airport. I don't know why we're going, whatever, because I was so 7 ways from Saturday in my head. So that's God. One of the lines that I hold so true that I wish people could understand a lot. There's a 12-step route for it, but I think it's applicable to everybody. Just kind of put in your own parallel here is God brought me to recovery. Recovery brought me back to God.
Another one-liner. We got to write them all down. Yes.
They're not mine, though. These are a lot of these aren't mine. These are things that I've
amazing.
heard over the years from people who are wiser than I am, or was at the time, and I still like to think that they are, because I have to always remain teachable.
Before we continue, I want to quickly tell you about MyPillow. I use a lot of MyPillow products. I sleep on a MyPillow. I use the My towels, and I walk into work every day wearing the My slippers. And you can get a lot of these products at a discount to boot if you use the promo code Hartman. And right now, MyPillow is having their biggest bedding sale ever. Get the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98, a set of pillowcases for only $9.98, and rejuvenate your bed with a MyPillow mattress topper for as low as $99.99. They also have blankets in a variety of sizes, colors, and styles. They even have blankets for your pets. Get duvets, quilts, down comforters, body pillows, bolster pillows, and so much more, all with the biggest discounts ever. They're also extending their money-back guarantee until March 1st, 2024, making them great gifts for your friends, your family, and everyone you know. Go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Hartman, or call 1-800-566-6745, and you'll get big discounts on all MyPillow bedding products, including the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98, and get all your shopping done now while quantities last. Oh my gosh. So much to react to here. Being an addict is a full-time job.
Yeah.
That is not something that I realized. You're constantly managing it all day. Were you able to go out and go to the grocery store? Like, was there any ability for you to be able to function?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I can imagine. How could you? Were you ever terrified, being trapped in that and fearing that you were going to die? I'll let you answer, and then I'll follow up with another question. When you were in that, did you ever think you were going to die?
Yeah, and I wanted to. That was the thing, is there were multiple occasions where, jails, institutions, and death, the three places where people who live in the thralls of addiction tend to end up untreated. And I was knocking on the last one very, very close, being death. I tried to commit suicide on 2 occasions. I failed both times. One time I tried to hang myself from a ceiling fan. The ceiling fan pulled out and knocked me out. And I came to, and I was like, no. My first thought was, oh crap, I'm not going to get my security deposit back. That was my first thought. Oh, so, and then the other time, I just, I'll leave that one alone. But it's a full-time job. I was praying that I wouldn't wake up. If I fell asleep, I was praying I wouldn't wake up. But I woke up every single day, and I had to keep doing what I was doing. And it was pain. It's pain.
Well, that was going to be my second question. It was going to be, wouldn't the fear of death be so powerful that it would make you realize, okay, I can't do this anymore? I mean, to draw an analogy that's probably so stupid in comparison to this, I know sometimes when I've had too much to drink and I feel really sick, that the feeling of being sick and worrying that I may be damaging myself, thankfully I've never feared that I was going to die, but damaging my liver, that is enough for me to go, okay, Julie, no, you're not ever doing this again. But what you just said was so enlightening, that the fear of dying in that moment wasn't powerful enough for you because you wanted to at some points. Why do you think that was, that you wanted to die? Do you think it was a shame with your addiction or something else?
I mean, most people, I feel like when you're trying to pull the eject cord, you have a good idea of it. I don't think I was just so overwhelmed with the entire reality that my reality had become.
Right.
I didn't have anybody around me. I mean, this is what I say to people is like the best way to explain how I hit rock bottom was I looked around and I realized I had no one left to blame for my problems, and my problem was me. And before I ended up trying, previous to that revelation that I had, suicide was the option for me at the time. Post revelation, make a phone call, try to get some help. And I can't explain, like I could look back now and be like, oh wow, finally the first time in my adult life I took accountability for something was the turning point, funny enough. So before that it's your problem. Dad doesn't love me. Dad divorced mom. Dad married Sue. Dad did this. Dad, brother, sister, friend, girlfriend, ex, whatever it was pointing fingers at everybody other than myself. It's an interesting, thing that for the first time in my adult life I took accountability for something was actually the first domino to fall on my recovery journey.
Well, this is what you were saying earlier with people surrounding the person who's an addict. There's nothing that you can do to help them. They have to help themselves. It has to come from within, is what I'm understanding. But
yeah,
for someone who's one of those family members or those friends, is there really nothing that we can do? What would have been the best way that someone from the outside could have helped you when you were in it? It feels so hard to just go, well, they have to figure it out on their own. I'm just going to let that happen, as a family member or a friend. What is the best possible course of action that you can take with regard to a loved one who's suffering?
So for me, I'm saying, like, if somebody was trying to help me, I don't pretend to know all the answers to everything. And right. I think it would be a disservice if I came on here and I was giving answers I didn't either know or believe in. For me, I genuinely don't think personally anybody could have done anything at all to help me out in my state. Well, I'll answer it like this. I do know that when my wife and I, God willing, have children, I'm not going to, if they're in high school and they go to a party, they have a couple beers, personally, I'm not going to ground them, I'm not going to freak out at them. But before all of this takes place, I need to raise them with a sense of knowing, listen, mom and dad did definitely probably the same thing, if not worse, than you are doing. Mm-hmm. We want you to feel like you can come to us and talk to us about anything. Now, if it gets into what I recognize as an addiction, then we'll have a different conversation. But the lead up to that, I think, is just as important, that I have to be aware of what is going on to the best of my ability, but through cultivating that relationship with my family and my child, so that they do feel like they can come to me. I said this to other people. I used to go to college. I used to go to high school campuses, and through my previous work, and I would talk to them and say, listen, just having just having a face that was there, that they knew, like if they went to a party and saw someone get into something bad, like they could come talk to me, and I'm not going to beat them over the head with a baseball bat, because I don't view what they're doing as a defective
Right.
character.
Right.
And I think it's a huge thing to a lot of people, and that goes hand in hand with how people view the stigma of recovery nowadays, which I think is a whole nother topic.
So let's talk about your recovery. So you, by the grace of God, found it within you to open up to your dad and ask for help. He flies out takes you to the airport. Where do you go? What happens? And was it from that moment on that you were sober, or did you ever relapse?
So the time, me being sober, this time was not my first time trying to get sober. The first time I ever was like put into a program, I was 14 and I went to a wilderness program, and then I spent a year in Utah.
Wow.
Yeah, that didn't do anything. Didn't do
Why?
anything. Wasn't ready for it. Just cost my parents a lot of money. Then in 2015, I went into a treatment center in Los Angeles. After about 60 days, I left. And I think I made it 30 days just white knuckling it on my own. What I mean by that is not having any sort of recovery program, not going to recovery meetings, just sitting at my apartment like this, like, okay, don't drink. Let's go to the grocery store. Let's do all the things you were talking about kind of before. Let's just do those things. And ultimately, I relapsed after, I think, 29 days. And I picked up right where I left off. A fallacy that a lot of people have is that, okay, I can drink, but I just won't do the other things. Or I could just smoke weed and I won't do the other things. Now, some people can, which I think they're anomalies, personally. But I hit the ground running. I went from stone cold sober to a needle in me within 24 hours. After saying, I'm just going to have a beer. I'm just going to have a beer just because I'm so anxious. 24 hours, between 24 hours and that beer, I had a needle in me again. And that was February of 2016. So my last run was really 2016 or February 2016 to June. And it was very short, and that was the darkest it ever was that little month, those few month periods heading into the summer.
Wow. So,
but ever since then, since my father came and told me we're going to the airport, flew me across the country, no, I have not relapsed since then, and that was June 4th, 2016.
why do you think that time was different?
I like I said, I think it's a combination of a few things. One being I genuinely hit my rock bottom, where I hadn't before. And I know that there was, I not at the time necessarily felt like there was a presence, because I don't want to get too preachy about all this, but like it was a feeling. It was something was different, and I had the most supportive people around me that I had ever had in my entire life. There was the rabbi who I didn't mention on the podcast, or on the fireside chat, who said I could mention his name, Rabbi Yosef Lipsker in Reading, Pennsylvania. He helped me more than I could even express. He helped me in a way find my way back to Judaism, and through the recovery process, begin to build a relationship back with my father once again as well. He played a big part in that, so I don't want to overlook that. But God enabled me to hit my rock bottom as safely as possible. Now I know from everything I just said, it doesn't sound like that was safely, but believe you me, I had it easy compared to a lot of people with this process. And even in addiction, I had it easier than a lot of people did and do.
When we were talking over Christmas, Aaron and I got to hang out, and right away we were talking all about this. You were telling me about some of the steps. And one of the things, and you mentioned it earlier in the show, that I thought was so great was the process of making amends to people, where you have to go in person and apologize for ways that you hurt them or things that you have done. And one of the things I love about talking with you, and as I said, going to AA meetings and meeting people who have been through this, is that the wisdom is so applicable to everyone, not just people who have gone through this. What you just said and what your dad highlighted in the fireside chat as the line of the hour, that your moment of waking up was when you realized that you had no one else to blame but yourself for your problems. Boy, if only everyone could internalize such a message. So can you go through, you can do all 12 steps or some of the steps, but what is the process of recovery?
Well, the process of recovery is, I think, can be said in a few different steps. So, I mean, one is you have to admit, just like with any problem, you have to admit that there is a problem and that your life is unmanageable because of it. Now, that second part, people hear powerless and they tend to focus on that the most. But the unmanageability part is equally, if not more important than being powerless over something, because people like, I thought I still had control. I thought I was shooting meth because I wanted to shoot meth, or that I was allowing myself to still do it. But that wasn't the case. My life was unmanageable because of it. Step 2, came to believe in a power greater than yourself, could restore you to sanity. Who wants to do that? I don't. But a lot of people get twisted up with that. You don't have to come to believe in something explicitly. You just have to be open to the idea that there is something that something can, in fact, help you. But 3, and for me, 3 was very, very tough, which is making the decision to turn my life over to that thing. And it ultimately was God. But at the moment, I said this, and hand to God, this was my experience and what I told my sponsor, the person who took me through my recovery program. I said, he's like, we're going through step 3, we're working it. And I was like, sure, what's the worst that can happen? Like, I didn't actually, but I was like, sure, take it. What's the worst that can happen? I was so beaten down, I was so broken. And that's something that I need to explain too, is a sense of hopelessness. I was truly powerless. And I felt like there was only one way to go, but up. Because the other option was, oh, this stuff doesn't work. I could always, and it sounds very dark, but I could always go back and end up at that final solution that I had tried 2 times before. So I really just I was given the gift of desperation, as they say. But step 4 is the inventory. Step 4 is the inventory. And you see so many people come into recovery and they go, oh, okay, I'm powerless. Okay, I can believe in something. Okay, sure, take the wheel. And then when they get to the inventory where you actually have to write down on pen and paper the things that you've done, your resentments, your harms list, your fears, your sexual misconduct inventory, all of these things you have to write down and put on paper, and then in 5 share with God and another human being. That freaks people out to no end. So you see, we call them 3-steppers, 1, 2, 3 out, and they go back out. It's sad. You can't
Wow.
give people the motivation to do it.
See,
You try to the best of your ability.
all of this are things that everyone should do, especially the inventory. So when we were talking, you said that you, when you just said it now, you shared it with a sponsor in addition to God, or to an advisor, perhaps is a better word than sponsor. When you share those things, do you guys then kind of decide how to go forward with who to apologize to or how to rectify things? What's the process of putting that inventory on paper and then moving both forward with it and rectifying it, but also past it and not letting it weigh you down anymore in life?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. So, I mean, the way step 5 really reads is that you admit to yourself, to another human being, and God the exact nature of your wrongs. And a side note, a good advisor, as you say, the first thing they'll do after you go over the 4th step will be, so what'd you leave out, huh? What'd you leave out that you wanted to take to your grave with you? And mine did.
That's a good advisor indeed.
And he's the only person to this day who knows a couple of those things.
That's when the real stuff comes out.
100%.
Yes. I probably shouldn't give away this trick, but sometimes when I'm interviewing people, I'll pause for a few seconds after they finish speaking. And then I notice if I pause a little bit, they actually pick up and they go in with their second answer. And sometimes the second answer is the real meat. It's the real kind of point that they wanted to make, or the admission that they wanted to put out there. And so sometimes I find that second time around, the real stuff comes out. Boy, that must have been brutal for you. It'd be brutal for me. It's a brutal thing.
Because we all have it. And this is to everybody listening, I don't care who you are. Everybody has that one or something that they will, or like, if anybody knows this, I will die.
That's what you said to me.
Everybody's got it.
So funny and so true. But so, again, I'm saying how applicable this is for everyone. Mm-hmm. Let's say you're not an addict and you have those things. You do that inventory. Should you go out and make amends? In other words, do you agree with my assertion that these kind of exercises have a utility and applicability for everyone? or not?
Absolutely. I do. I mean, I think recovery programs in general, my rule of thumb is as long as you're trying to level up in your life and minimize the harm along the way, you're on the right track.
Yeah.
And for some days, if you're able to just have your head hit the pillow at the end of the night, that's a win. It's true. Some people need to hear that. I mean, I'm not condoning people, just this whole mentality that like a lot of people on the left now try to preach with, you don't need to do certain things. People need to accept everything about, like, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying don't be afraid to give yourself credit when it's due, and don't overflog yourself when it's unnecessary. Like, sometimes a win is waking up, making breakfast, getting your duties done for the day, and going to bed.
As you said to me, keeping your side of the street clean.
Yep.
That is a win. What was your biggest fear getting sober?
That my life is over.
Really? Did you fear that you were never going to be able to have fun without substances?
Yeah, I did.
That's a fear
100%.
that so many people have, not just addicts.
And which is weird too. It's almost like an oxymoron, because I'm not having fun, yet I feel that I'm not going to have fun if I get sober. So I like to call that your lower power's voice. Your lower powers in early recovery, and when you're going through tough times, your lower power is your first thought and your higher power is your second thought. Just give it a second, process it, work through it.
Have you been able to have fun sober?
There is the cliche that in recovery programs that say, my worst day sober is far better than my any day when I was using or drunk. And I'll tell you what, it is.
Why?
It's true. It's very true. I guess because I'm allowed to I've been given the gift of being allowed to have these things in my life now. Mm-hmm. I get to experience these things. It's something that I said on the fireside chat, and I tried it. This is like one of my slogans, if you will, is I like to say that I get to do things rather than I have to do things. And it makes life so much more manageable and less like this mountain that I have to climb as a terrible journey. Because it's not. Life is a beautiful journey that I get to experience now, and the negatives make the positives that much brighter. So yes, my worst day in recovery is better than my worst day, my worst day in recovery is better than my best day getting drunk.
I love what you just said, that you get to do things, not that you have to. And as you articulated that, it applies as much to the challenges as it does to the great things, because I view challenges as a fantastic opportunity to better myself and put myself sort of through like a cosmic resistance training, which will pay dividends later in my life. But I can imagine that when you encounter life's formidable challenges, that it might be harder for someone who's in recovery. Challenges are hard for everyone, but especially someone with that temptation. Have you, and do you ever fear right now in your life that you will relapse?
So I want to be clear about this. If I think that I am immune from relapse, I've already lost. I can sit here before you right now and say that I consider myself a recovered alcoholic, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to relapse. It means I'm recovered from a hopeless state of body and mind. I have a solution to my problem now, and my problem is me. Left unchecked, without being aware, like the 10th step, for instance, keeping aware of when I need to go make an amends. When I wrong somebody, quickly fix that problem. 11, daily prayer and meditation. And I understand that as praying is talking, meditation is listening. Simple as that. Don't have to complicate it. And then 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, I try to carry this message to other alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of my affairs. 10, 11, and 12, those are the maintenance steps. If I am not willing to do those things, I am on a track to relapse. If I'm unaware of when my character defects crop up, I'm on a track to relapse. The relapse starts way before you actually drink. Chances are I would get divorced from how bad I was acting before I actually took a drink.
Wow. You said being an addict is a full-time job. Being in recovery maybe isn't a full-time job, but is pretty damn close to one. It's a lot of upkeep.
It seems like it, but I have an analogy for you.
Okay.
It's like going to the gym after you haven't been to the gym in a very long time, right?
I know the feeling.
At the beginning, I know it's New Year's Eve. A lot of people are trying to probably
exactly.
You know,
a lot
the
of
gym's
us
gonna be
know
packed.
that
It's gonna
feeling.
be a disaster. But it's like going to the gym after you haven't been in the gym in a long time. You know, you start doing a pull or a push, and your bones cracking, and it feels weird, right? It feels uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. But the more you go back to the gym, the less cracking there is, the more you're in your routine, and the less you actually think about, okay, I have to go from this exercise to this exercise. The less you have to actually think about it, the more it becomes second nature and just part of your everyday program. Because everybody, whether they know it or not, has a program in life. It just depends on what are you running your program on. Is it faith? Is it God? Or is it activism? Or is it wokeism? Or whatever ism has you? You know? I firmly believe, too, that people get addicted to these activist causes. It's the same substitute for people with drug and alcohol addiction. There's no difference.
Totally.
There's a hole in the soul. They're trying to fix it with some outside thing that is giving them the illusion that it's making them feel good.
People have this idea that they're not following anything in life. All of us are following something. As you say, The question is what? And I totally agree with you. I mean, I saw this a lot when I was in college, that people viewed protesting as their vocation, as a way to find meaning, because we all crave that feeling of being a part of something that's greater than ourselves. And it's so sad now that people view, frankly, many of these shallow causes as their way of finding meaning in life, but they won't even consider faith and religiosity to be an option for them.
Yeah. And it took me a long time to get back to that as well. I mean, I met my wife. She wasn't religious, but we started dating. I didn't ask her to convert to Judaism. She loved the concept. She loved, after learning about it, that she decided she wanted to. And we have a beautiful Jewish home now. And we're going to be able to raise, God willing, beautiful Jewish children in it. But to your point, everything is run on faith. People believe that certain things are going to happen, you know, like the ice caps are going to melt. So they live their life a certain way. Yeah. That hasn't happened yet. There's no way to know if it will happen. Mm-hmm. But they believe it will, so they live their life a certain way. Some people believe that, you know, different religions have different faiths. That, you get what I'm saying. Everybody lives their life based on faith. It's just a matter of, is it detrimental to your life? Is it beneficial to society? What are you trying to get out of it?
Right.
And I think once people start exploring that a little bit more, they'll realize that a lot of the things that they've run their life on based this entire time is fake.
That's a hard realization to have, but it's so necessary. You're absolutely right. So in our final moments, why did you launch AP Unfiltered?
The short answer, to affect change. The longer version of that is, I truly believe that this country is heading for a tipping point, and I talked about it on the episode that I filmed today. Every time there's an election, people always talk about the fact that this is the end of all days. This is the most important election in history. This is the most important election.
You're right.
Look what has happened in 3 years. We've lost everything and up into and including gender, which is the most basic thing on earth. That is the most common understanding that we've always had, and the left has corrupted it, just like they do with everything they touch. They are the party of chaos, and sadly, it's growing. It's getting worse. And, you know, I don't want to get into too many different things right now, but the long and the short of it is, the podcast is here to point out the double standard of what the left is, the rules for thee and not for me, to try to wake up as many people as possible. And the reason I am on Rumble as well as I'm on YouTube is because Just like the fireside chats say, we don't know how long big tech is going to allow us to be here. Rumble is a bastion of free speech. The team does great work over there. I highly recommend every content creator have a significant presence on Rumble. I'm not being paid by them to say that. This is what I truly believe. But YouTube and X, Twitter, you got to be on those as well. You can't shy away from them because that is the battleground. That's the battleground. X and Twitter. And I want to be, or X and YouTube. That's why I'm on both platforms. That's why I started the podcast, to try to change the narratives and wake some people up more to what is happening in this country, because the left, so many, they prey on the hard workers. They prey on the people who go to work, come home, watch 5 minutes of mainstream news a day, Fox included. And they get fed these narratives that are so untrue. They don't understand the nuances within it. And if they could just have somebody concisely break down in 5 to 7, 8, 9 minutes, whatever it is, maybe we can get an extra vote come 2024.
I am so glad that you're in this space, especially because many of the themes that we've just spent the hour discussing are really kind of the things that got us here in the first place. The lack of religiosity and faith and God and his presence in our lives. This idea of addiction, not just with people's addictions to drugs and alcohol, but people are addicted to activism. They're addicted to their news sources. They're addicted to social media. They're addicted to outrage. And you, especially with your worldview and your wisdom, are so the right person to kind of help us navigate how we got here, what really is going on, and hopefully how we can move forward. It really is amazing, the parallels between your addiction experience and this moment.
Yeah. And I'd add to the list of things you just said, people are addicted to victimhood.
Yes. Oh gosh.
They are.
That's the biggest one. Yes.
Yeah. It's the easiest thing to say. It's just, hey, listen, I don't have to do X, Y, and Z, or I don't have to conform to any sort of standards. Society should conform to me rather than me conform to society because I'm a victim.
Amen. Aaron, I'm so honored and lucky to know you. Thank you so much for coming on today. And everyone, please check out AP Unfiltered. And by the way, there's no space between AP and Unfiltered. I learned that the hard way. Yes. I found these other people who were perfectly nice, but they weren't the AP Unfiltered that I was looking for. So it's AP Unfiltered, no space. Aaron, thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you for having me on. Hopefully we can do it again sometime.
I would love that. And also, you talked a bit about Felicia. Aaron's wife, Felicia, is extraordinary. We got to bring her on sometime.
It will be a cold day in hell before she'll go on camera.
She probably won't do it, but hey, we can try.
Oh, we'll see.
I'll see you soon, Aaron. Thanks so much.
See you.
And thanks to all of you. I will see you soon here on this YouTube channel. Just as a reminder, please hit the subscribe button down below if you like what you see and you'd like to stay notified with all our new pieces of content coming out in this new year. Take care, and I'll see you soon.